right, well, good morning, everybody. I'm glad to see so many of you out here after our crushing defeat last night in the Super Bowl. Nobody's mourning. I can't say as much for Tony. She is out sick, and I almost didn't come in today either. So you're going to have to bear with me. I'm kind of recovering from the flu. Do get your flu shots if you haven't had them. It's not pleasant. Tony is going to have section today. She's going to be coming in, but for those of you who are in her Monday section, bear with her as well too. We're going to fight our way through it and continue going on. Just a few quick announcements. The BSpace website, I've uploaded all of the PowerPoints from the last couple lectures on there, so you can find those. All the images, things like that. So they should be there. And I think, did it announce automatically? Did you guys get emails? Do you get like 5 emails in a row? I thought I was just going to do 1, but okay. So yeah, you can opt out of that if you don't want to get notified, but it'll notify you when things are uploaded, so you guys will have access to those. Any questions before we get started? Anything we want to talk about? Anything from last time? We can briefly kind of take a look at where we left off last time. We were talking about the Uruk period. We talked about this transition out of the Neolithic into the Uruk period. Specifically, we're focused on the late Uruk period from around 3500 to 3100 BCE. And we're really looking at some of the really interesting developments that take place during this time. The emergence of really the first cities. And we talked about cities last time. This huge, massive increase in settlement size. Not that the populations are getting bigger, but the people are now living closer together and ever increasing, bigger settlements. We see new agricultural techniques in farming, the cedar plow we talked about, mass production of pottery and things like that coming from the slow potter's wheel. And of course, the emergence of writing and of cylinder seals, which we're going to talk about today. I just wanted to kind of briefly go through these again. The 2 major areas at the site of Uruk, our type site for talking about the Uruk period, right? One of them was the Ziggurat of Anu, or the Anu complex, and then there was the Eanna complex, right? This house of heaven dedicated to the goddess Inanna and, right, the god Anu in the case of the Ziggurat. And we talked about this Uruk temple in the sense that, right, it's very similar to these temples that we saw even as early as the Ubaid period, right? It's got that tripartite plan, it's got the altar, it's got the offering table. You can see here that there's a staircase that goes up, but boom, right? You come in and the staircase, you're not able to enter. The main access is a bent access. You're coming in through the side and turning to the left. Cardinal points, again, here's north, are oriented towards the points on the compass. All those attributes that go into a temple we're seeing here. However, in the Uruk period, specifically with this temple, we're seeing another major evolution in the Mesopotamian temple. And that is this elevated platform, right? This elevated platform almost 40 feet in the air that would raise the temple up. And this is the beginning of the ziggurat. This is a temple form that we're going to see from this point on for the next thousands of years. Again, here's a comparison with those Ubaid temples. You can see right on the mark, niched mud brick architecture, all the things that we've been talking about. And we spoke about how during the Uruk period, we're seeing similarities in temple construction, not just within this site, even though there's a tremendous amount of experimentation taking place at Uruk with this massive monumental architecture, but we see it at other sites too, at the site of Tel Uker, Eridu as well. These are being decorated with the same stone columns, the same inlaid cones that we looked at, the same plans, and some of the same iconography. So anyway, this is just to say that, again, we're seeing this uniformity in art and architecture that's spreading and expanding over a very, very large expanse. So we're going to look at the Uruk expansion next time in terms of trade contacts and some of these other sites. But in the late Uruk period, in Temple C, we have a development which deserves a little bit more time and a little bit more emphasis. And that is, we find some of our earliest examples of writing coming from this context. We spoke a little bit about writing last time. We can think of writing, again, as a communication system for the storage and retrieval of information. So it's not surprising then that really, just like we saw with all of those stamp seals that came out of the Ubaid temples at Tepe Gawra, that writing really emerges hand in hand as a way of storing information for transactions. Really, writing emerges as a way of keeping track of commodities, of who has what, who's signing off on what, records for contracts, these sorts of things. It's very much linked to accounting. Very humble beginnings when we think about writing, which is going to tell us all about mythology and whatnot later on. It has this very humble beginning as a recording system. At first, it appears that we have two competing systems of writing and this information storage. And this is very interesting. First things that we see early on, and this actually emerges around the same time in Iran at a site called Susa, is a token system. And this token system, they're called Bulla, B-U-L-L-A, or the plural is with an E. And these are clay tokens of different sizes that represent different commodities. You can see them here. And they would have been wrapped up inside a hollow clay ball and then impressed with a seal that closes it off. So you can get a sense of what this is doing, right? You're taking information in the form of your commodity or whatever you're recording, your tokens, and you're sealing it up in this clay envelope and preserving it then, sealing it with a seal that can't be replicated. And therefore, right, when this information is retrieved later, it's preserved and it's unbroken and untampered with. All parties that witness the breaking of this ball can see that the seal is intact and that nobody's being cheated. You know, you're not scrimping off a couple goats on the side or a few core of wheat. This system evolves a bit. It actually later on the tokens become pressed into the surface and derive shapes and later pictograms. And for many reasons, it's thought that this was a very early type of writing that then, right, you can see the progression going from these tokens, you take out the tokens, and then you just start making the marks. It's a very attractive idea that this token system is a natural progression towards, instead of having tokens, just making marks on clay, and boom, you have writing. The truth, of course, is a little bit more complex. It seems as though that we had these two different writing styles. You can see here an example also from Susa, and this one's from Jebel Aruda in Syria, contemporary with the late Uruk period. Right, this is the other type. Right? Instead of tokens, now we have impressions on clay, another type of recording system. Again, it looks like, we want to say this is the first one, this is the second one, but it seems as though these were actually used at the same time in some contexts. So the reasoning for that, there are a number of theories. Different types of contracts would have required different types of recording, perhaps personal versus public contracts, that sort of thing. It's not really clear because, again, these are basic accounting symbols. They're not writing per se. These symbols don't have a phonetic value. They're not related to language yet. They're purely representational. Now we see three stages from this point on in the development of writing. In the Uruk IV period, right, contemporary with our Iana complex, Temple C, again around 3300 BCE, we see signs drawn with a pointed stylus on clay tablets. And again, we don't know what these say. It can't be read per se. Here's an example of them again. But we see this progression of these ideographic signs which are representational. They're very complex, however. While we can't read them per se, there are over 700 different signs at this time. Again, probably relating to specific commodities, but we haven't been able to really figure them out. That changes in the Uruk III period. Uruk III is also another word for another name for the Jemmet Nasser period. So these are contemporary with the Anu Ziggurat. And what we see during the Uruk III is a much more developed system of abstract signs, but they use straighter lines and fewer curves, larger tablets, and a much more complex arrangement of sign. You can compare the two side by side here. They're still economic in nature, often relating to rations, to temple offerings, scribal lists, but now they're actually representing language. They're representing the Sumerian language spoken at the time at Uruk, and these symbols are uniform at other sites, at Jebel Nasser, at Tel Uqair, at Ashuna, and also they're contemporary with developments in Susa, which we'll look at a little bit later. This is a very important transition because as soon as you move from these ideographic representations of just, goat, sheep, bale of wheat, you can now, when you're representing language, express much more complex ideas. You can talk about the past, you can talk about the future, you can talk about anything from a recipe for a medical text to a mythological story. So this is a very important transition that takes place. While these symbols do have a phonetic value in the sense that they do relate to spoken words, they're still ideographic in the sense that they represent what they are. So on the back of this tablet, for example, since they are ideographic, let's see if you guys can actually figure out, just by looking at these signs, what this tablet is for. Let's start with this sign here. So what does this look like to you guys? Just throw out a few ideas. I'll give you a hint. It's actually two signs in one. This is the first, and then this is the second. What does this look like to you? Highly stylized, but just go for it. Throw out what does it bring to mind? I bet you could figure this out. Yeah? Knife. Kind of looks like a knife, right? It's got this edge here. It's a thin area, not quite a knife. Any ideas? It's a human body part, I'll give you that. This is asking too much on a Monday morning. Take a look. I'll give you guys a second I'm sure you can figure this out. How about this right here? So we got this sort of central area. No ideas at all? Completely blank, yeah.
Could it maybe be a stylized head with a little circular thing being like an ear?
So like a little ear and a neck and a chin and maybe these sort of eyes? Yeah, that's exactly what it is. It's a head. So it's a stylized head. And then what does this look like? It's actually sitting in something. What's that look like? This little thing with a maybe decorative band around it? A bowl, right? So we've got a head in a bowl. And when you put a head and a bowl together, what do you get? What do you do with the bowl? What do you think this sign means? Head and a bowl. Hungry, eating, right? It means to eat. It's the sign to eat. It's ku. How about this one? What does that look like? Sort of angular shape with a neck on the top, little handle coming off of the side here. Yeah?
Might be like the symbol for beer or like some kind of liquid.
Yeah,